Good morning and welcome to Flagship Studios in 2025, the first live stream for the JP Morgan conference. I'm Alec Reynolds. I'm the COO of Pioneering Medicines, which is Flagship's internal drug discovery and development unit. And I am thrilled to be here with my partner and Marija Tadin-Strapps, who heads up the discovery network at Pfizer. And we're going to have a great conversation over the next half hour. And for those in the audience who are, maybe just give some perspective and background on the partnership with Flagship and Pfizer, we are beginning our second full year. And this opportunity is to create a new portfolio of medicines that we're co-creating together, and Flagship and Pfizer co-funding from the very beginning, but looking to develop medicines across different therapeutic areas with the modalities from Flagship's platform companies. And so it's a Pfizer, Flagship, and a way to work with multiple platform companies. And we're going to explore that partnering model, which is unique and new, and we've been working hard to make it work in practice, and we've got some good progress that we'll share with you throughout the next half hour in our dialogue. So welcome to all those who are joining, and Marija to joining me here. Maybe we'll start the conversation a little bit. You're the head of the discovery network at Pfizer. Maybe tell the audience a little bit about your current role, team, and purpose.
Sure. First, I want to thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here. Very excited to talk to you about our partnership. So as you mentioned, I currently head the function at Pfizer called Discovery Network, which is focused on identification of external opportunities that would help us maximize and kind of accelerate portfolio growth. My team is particularly focused on novel platforms, therapeutic indications, new targets, and new disease mechanisms. And we work very broadly, so we cover really kind of broadly the strategic interest of Pfizer Research and Development Organization. So we work closely with our colleagues within the research units and scientific lines. And then externally, we are looking at opportunities both in the academic sector and also in the biotech sector. So, in terms of kind of our portfolio, we have a number of different partnerships and collaborations in place. They can range anywhere from the global public-private partnerships, where we have a number of, let's say, different pharma partners working with the academic institutions to solve scientific questions. So an example of this would be open targets. We also have a number of large academic strategic investments. So we currently have an investment ongoing in the space of the RNA therapeutics. And then, of course, we have smaller research collaborations, both within the academic sector and then also within the biotech sector. Then, the kind of the final type of this external engagement would be collaborations with the VC firms such as Flagship. And, this one is definitely unique and kind of very exciting one. But in terms of kind of specific areas of focus, all of our platform pretty much focuses on the areas specifically, let's say, in the therapeutic and the platform space that would be around either protein homeostasis. We are interested in tissue targeting, novel drug screens, and machine learning and AI, among others.
Terrific role. And your perspective, so Marija is a scientist and a research lead earlier in her career, and obviously works for Pfizer now in a larger organization, but has worked for at least two biotechs, I think, in your background. In what way does this partnership, is it unique to the ones that you're working on now or have set up through Pfizer, or you've seen in your past?
Yeah. So I think it's different, right? Because we are exploring essentially novel way of engagement. So the partnership itself is kind of unique in terms of the scope, in terms of the intent, and also governance, right? So in terms of the scope, we are broadly interested in coming up with novel therapeutic concepts with the ultimate goal of jointly co-developing up to 10 new medicines based on some of these concepts. I think what's really kind of exciting for me, coming from more platform background, is the ability to tap into very broad network of flagship portfolio companies. So that makes it quite exciting because we have new ways of maybe trying to address some of the old questions.
Right. So, and the partnership is It's together. It's across therapeutic areas, and it matches, or it seeks to explore opportunities in clinical space where new medicines are needed, but yet also with technologies and approaches that are complementary to what Pfizer has internally. In that sense, that's unique from the different models that you've worked on before. When we first started together, so we've been working together for about a year, let's say, or maybe a little bit over a year. How was that process of starting up the partnership kind of within Pfizer with a unique model such as this one?
Yeah, so I think what you highlighted is very important. I think the successful partnership kind of really brings in complementary skills, right? So on one hand, from the Pfizer side, we have deep disease expertise, the knowledge of the drug development, understanding of the market. And then on the Flagship side, there is kind of the entrepreneurial, innovative spirit, having the ability to kind of come up with some of these novel modalities. And then, of course, pioneering medicine, colleagues such as yourself, helping us translate some of these novel kind of platforms into actually potentially therapeutics. So we spend, I think the team has worked fantastically, right, in the last year. I've been incredibly impressed with kind of the level of commitment. We have shared and clear goals. I think that's very important. We have great candor, as me and you discussed the other day, and I think that's very important, right? And what we are trying to do is tackle essentially kind of complex health problems in slightly maybe different way than either one of us could do individually. So the other thing that we have done, and I think on both sides, right, invested quite a bit of effort to kind of promote the partnership within our respective organizations. And so this is important to kind of increase awareness so that colleagues within Pfizer are aware of the opportunity. We are also trying to kind of engage our broader scientific community to help us brainstorm around the novel therapeutic concepts and also help us identify the areas of need.
Yeah, I think that's, so Marija's a little bit more of the background. I think your perspective, having worked in different organizations of different sizes, I think it's been a great working kind of relationship with you. I think you brought a sense of what are the interests and purpose of this for Pfizer's strategy, but also an understanding of what it is to work with with the platform companies that are enabling each of the medicines that we're creating. So what is it to be inside a smaller company, working with Flagship and Pfizer in this partnership? I think you've had an awareness of that and sort of the interests and thoughts and concerns of some of the, what's on the mind of the companies. And then I think I also just so appreciate the mindset you have brought of what's possible of doing that together. But maybe just reflect a little bit about that. It seems your background and kind of how you've kind of brought that into this leadership role.
Thank you, yeah. So I think because of my background that has been primarily in platforms and kind of novel technologies, and then also my experience working both in large pharma and in smaller companies, and one of them being one of the flagship companies, gave me the appreciation really of kind of possible when you work together, right? So these challenges, and the questions we are trying to solve are, very difficult. The pace of innovation is very, very fast, right? So it's kind of impossible. It's very difficult to keep up, and essentially it's impossible to solve some of these questions on your own. So I think, collectively, we have to really kind of come up with novel, new ways of working together. And that has been very important, especially kind of trying to tap into the external innovation. So, there are so many new discoveries in terms of both either disease mechanism or novel platforms and technologies. If we were to do that on our own, it would take very long time, right?
To go one by one.
One by one, we may not be aware of everything that's kind of out there. So working collaboratively through these external engagements allows us to evaluate these opportunities much faster, and then really to kind of see which one is the most promising technology and platform that then we can bring into our portfolio.
Yes, and one piece of the model for those who are joining online is it starts either with a patient and a set of biological mechanisms and hypotheses, and then we together with the teams are looking for the right technology as a particular application for that. There are also other programs where we and Pfizer are interested in just novel insights and novel targets. And so, of course, we're working with some of the biology companies, and a sort of a third style is an application of a novel modality to a particular target. One thing for us on the flagship side, it seems quite important that this is a partnership with, we hope, last many years, and we'll create many new programs together. And so that has a commitment over a long period of time. And so it's not just what's the one particular program we're going to partner on.
Yeah.
If they were just doing it in the absence of an umbrella, but if Pfizer's just working directly with the company. But here it's a longer commitment in a sense, and sort of and I think that builds up some trust, I think, between us and the teams, that we want to get them right, and we're committed to a long-term relationship in a way. Anyway, that's something we feel quite strongly about it. Maybe you want to share some
likewise.
Comments
One thing that we have done quite well, I would say, during this past year is work together to build a portfolio that's kind of balanced, right? Going from very novel biology and kind of novel target space to maybe some of the more validated targets or tissues, but that are kind of traditionally have been difficult to drug, right? And then applying some of the novel modalities. So really looking broadly in terms of both the risk of the portfolio and then trying to cover different disease areas. So I think that's very important, because not all modalities are necessarily applicable to all of the disease areas. And so we are trying to really kind of diversify the portfolio and do that together, right? Really build the portfolio together.
Yes, and so some perspective. So we may create 15 or more new early programs, let's say, and then as those progress towards the clinic, we will, and Pfizer will select the strongest programs to go into the clinic. And the goal there is 10, let's say. But even from the beginning, our first meetings that we had with the JSC members and leadership members is to really kind of think about what kind of portfolio we wanted to construct, because it was a portfolio of 15 medicines, we're in the process of creating. And so far, we've announced 5 programs. There are other programs that will be announced, and we have a head of steam, I think, coming into 2025 of the next several programs that we're working on. Maybe talk a little bit more about the portfolio strategy, and give maybe the audience a little flavor of the programs we've started so far.
Yeah. So I think some of our initial announcements are in the cardiometabolic space, right? Because that was one of the research units that kind of engaged very early on, right? So there with Profound, we have a collaboration that has been announced kind of in the obesity space. So that's very interesting, looking at the dark proteome and what's possible. And they have kind of a unique platform that may allow us to look in that space. I'm also very excited about the collaborations we have with Quotient, very novel kind of approach and new technology. And I'm super kind of excited to see the readout of some of these collaborations as the work is up and running. Then, our collaboration with Ampersand, kind of more specifically looking at tissue targeting. And, they have a really clever way of trying to kind of come up with kind of addresses or specific way of targeting certain cell types versus the others. And so we have a first collaboration in the obesity space, but you can see how that could be expanded, right, to some of the other projects. And then actively, we've been engaging also to expand this in other areas, right? So we have one collaboration that's in the oncology space.
With Montai.
That's right. So that's looking more around, known target, but difficult to drug, and, leveraging their AI kind of platform to help design new drugs. And now we are actively engaging with other research units to come up with novel concepts, right? So it will be very nice to see how we expand our portfolio, because we have 5 partnerships. I think that's fantastic, these early research explorations, but there is so much more to do, right? And then trying to see, as we come up with the new concepts, what platforms, and I'm sure there are going to be many additional ones we would want to kind of bring in and have partnerships with.
I think a good balance so far, right? So novel targets, potentially with through Quotient and Profound, and modality with addressing in obesity with ampersand, and a very difficult to drug oncology target that's well known that Montai has a unique approach to. So I think for the audience, hopefully you get a sense of just even within the first year how we've tried to have some balance within the portfolio and across different therapeutic areas in the internal medicine group and CV, renal, and in oncology. What are you? Tell us, maybe talk a little bit about. Okay, so this is we're creating a portfolio, right? Sort of together, right? How do you and colleagues at Pfizer R&D leaders think about how this intersects or complements Pfizer's overall portfolio strategy, and if you could just offer some reflections on that.
Sure, yeah. So for us, the external partnerships are very important part of our strategy. Our portfolio is kind of a mix of the internal homegrown projects and then external collaborations. And what we do quite well, I would say, at Pfizer is we have a number of different fit-for-purpose collaboration types and then also fit-for-purpose funding mechanisms. And I think that's important because it gives you great flexibility in terms of, how do you want to engage with the external partners, because, every external partner is a little bit different. Flagship collaboration is definitely an important part of our external investment strategy. And what's nice is that it really spans very broad kind of spectrum of the discovery projects that we have. So I think we have to continue to innovate and be even more kind of clever how we engage and build the portfolio. But it's important to think about maybe the external collaborations. As I mentioned earlier, how can you evaluate some of these opportunities faster? And there is going to be a great number of them, so that then actually what's the most promising science you want to bring in internally. And some of these opportunities are high risk, high reward.
Yes,
some of the
partnership. Yeah.
Exactly. So some of the opportunities can also be later stage assets that we think are very promising and that are closely aligned with our strategic areas of interest, and we may want to bring this forward. So it's really kind of a combination of different stages in terms of the engagements that we are looking for externally.
That's good. And you expect, maybe so far, so maybe 5 platform companies, right, are participating so far and have active programs. So it's sort of in a year, let's say, gone from, what's the clinical profile of medicine we want to create? What's the medical challenge we want to address? What's the biological rationale? What's the right technology to aligning on that and creating that and funding that, and we have a joint project teams that are working on all of the programs sort of bespoke for the particular asset. And so there's like a very strong kind of accountability and sort of execution focus for those. And I had to take the chance to sort of and thank the platform companies and Ampersand and Quotient and Profound and Montai for just being great partners, right? Sort of like with all of us to make this happen and build this early momentum. On our side, that's taken a good amount of just coordination with inside Flagship and with the companies to understand, well, how can this partnership be so beneficial for them? How does it work in practice? Maybe talk a little bit well, you've done a lot of work, I know, inside Pfizer, also to just acclimate and sort of make a greater awareness among the discovery groups across multiple different therapeutic areas. There's a lot of colleagues and views. How have you kind of gotten the word out a bit and the mindset set in the right way?
Sure, absolutely. And before I do that, I also want to thank you and the Pioneering medicine team, because I think you guys have done a phenomenal job bringing these different platforms and technologies to our attention. Like you said, we kind of can identify the unmet medical need, right? And then the teams brainstorm together to come up with a therapeutic concept. But then there could be many different ways of going after it, right? And so I think you have done a tremendous job there trying to help us identify the right partners. So what I have done, and not only myself, but I would say our kind of core alliance team, and then also our scientists, is really take different opportunities to essentially promote the partnership, right? Whether it's the internal research forums, getting engagement more broadly with different scientists within the research units, pulling in, and we've been trying actually, we had the targeted meetings, right, with different research units and different teams, because all of them have slightly different questions that they are interested in. So, I think we have a kind of shared goal, and there is a lot of effort to make this work and to make it successful. But it's really more kind of about making sure that there is good awareness, because I think if people don't know about what you are doing, it's going to be kind of,
uncertain. Not sure how it can benefit.
That's one thing. And then, we also had to spend a lot of time. This is a very different type of collaboration, right? So I would say almost we had to educate a little bit also the internal colleagues, how does this work? How can we best engage? The response has been, I would say very positive, and we have now a number of these joint exploration teams or JETs, right, that are working together in different areas to brainstorm and come up together with the therapeutic concepts, and we are expanding them, right? We have active JET in the oncology and the cardiometabolic space, and now we are expanding those to other areas, including immunology as well as the anti-infective.
Yes, it's taken a fair bit of mobilization of communication, at least maybe a year ago, right? Yeah, and we've built it over the course of 2024 to establish kind of the mindset and just build up some relationships on multiple points. Yeah. And that, the press releases come out and people may know that piece, but I cannot emphasize the sort of like time and care it's taken from Marija and Charlotte and Bill and Kevin and many others at Pfizer to create that kind of a sense of what we can do together. And I think we're kind of hitting our stride in a sense now that good awareness is set, I think.
Thank you, yeah. Awesome. We definitely, part of a successful, I would say actually key ingredient, right, for a successful collaboration is trust. And also just getting to know each other, right? So understanding better how we best work together. And I think teams, luckily we are co-located, right, in Cambridge, or many of us are in Cambridge. So we, have opportunities to interact in person. I think that has been very helpful, and we'll continue to do that. We have spent a lot of time in active discussions, around contracting, because that's also a very important piece. And, then trying to also work, in person, address any of the questions. So teams are coming up with kind of innovative ways how to make basically the collaboration successful. So I've been very impressed kind of looking at the level of collaboration across both sides, but really from kind of different groups. So it's not only the scientists, right? That's only like one part of the team, but it's the alliance, it's the BD, legal. All of those colleagues are working, together.
It's a very big undertaking,
it is,
I would say,
yes.
And each end and
but worthwhile,
others
very
have done.
worthwhile.
We're really happy, I think, and at least from the flagship side of the progress and the potential. I thought we had a kind of great year-end meeting of kind of not resting on our laurels because we're still just 1 year in, but with a good sense of what do we want to kind of create in 2025. It's sort of two speeds. Like for the ones we've created, like it's really executing the plan.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like that builds confidence and trust and as we work through this early programs. So that's a very big emphasis, I know, for you and Charlotte, and so also for Luciana, Louise, and the platform teams. So that's sort of like the execution focus of what we've created. And there's sort of like, okay, we're gonna create many new programs this year, right? That's a aspiration. What are you excited about, Marija, this year to explore together and
Yeah, so I'm very excited, to see some of the results coming out of the work that we initiated, and I think potentially there are going to be few of these early explorations that are going to be reading out by the end of this year. So I think that will definitely create a lot of excitement because some of these are with very novel platforms and technologies, and we want to see the data. Yes, we are all scientists. So that's really good. And then, really building the portfolio, continuing to expand in the new areas. I mean, I mentioned, we have a project now in oncology, but we want to expand it, right? We already initiated some discussions with the oncology team to expand more around either difficult to drug targets or, looking potentially at immuno-oncology applications. Working also with our inflammation and immunology team and the anti-infective team. So building kind of the portfolio to cover additional disease areas. That's going to be very exciting. I would love to hear more from different flagship companies. So, we are here now for a few days. Hopefully I have a chance to meet some of them at the reception and, through the kind of our continued engagement. Because I'm sure that there are some approaches out there that you have in your portfolio that, we are not even thinking about, right?
Yes.
We are not aware about. So I would love to see continued investment in, either novel approaches to go after some of these relatively kind of well-validated targets, kind of new modalities, new approaches to go after them, novel ways of going after different kind of tissue targeting, and whether that's kind of expanding maybe on the partnership we already have with Ampersand, or I don't know if there are other approaches in the portfolio, as well as looking at the novel biology, right, and new disease mechanisms, because there is a number of platforms that Flagship has that we haven't really kind of tapped into just yet.
That's right.
And then, it would be great to also see some of these more mature kind of peri-IND programs that we discussed, because, that's also one part of the portfolio that we are trying to build in 2025.
Yes.
So I think, we have done a great job. It has been amazing, working together over the last 1 year. But it's only kind of the beginning, right? You said this is a long-term collaboration, and so there is much more to come. So looking forward to many more of these.
I love that. I think so most of the programs, for the audience to know, are de novo. I mean, they're just to be created, right? But we do seek, in our back to the portfolio strategy and sort of a balanced portfolio of putting in some programs that are closer to DC and to the clinic, right? And that's we've been looking together, and companies have come forward and with opportunities, but that remains an important part, I think, in building kind of the construct and building up the portfolio. So we're kind of, that's, I would say, a focus for this year again. And then you said, so oncology, major focus for Pfizer, of course, and has had very active large R&D and the Seagen acquisition. So that's a big effort, and we're starting to. There's a very good meeting at the end of the year with the oncology discovery group and looking at some new opportunities. So far we're working I think we're working with 5 or 6 companies, let's say platform companies, 5 companies. Any words or thoughts for the companies we haven't worked with yet, who may be listening or out there, but we are connecting with them this year? Any perspective you would like to add?
So I would say we would love to hear from them. We would like to hear more about the platforms and technologies. I'm very much passionate about kind of learning about what's possible. And, together we can, try to help address some of these really important questions and come up with potentially new therapeutics, right? So please approach us, whether, it's through yourself, through our standard meetings, but we are looking forward to essentially hearing more and expanding really kind of the network of connections.
Super. It's been great, I think, to get the mindset, I think, about what we can create together. I think kind of all pieces of this. It has great creativity, right? There's the potential of this partnership, right, of what we can create. And they're just great discussions about sort of, well, where would that medicine fit within the emerging landscape that other innovations are going on in the field, and how would it fit into clinical practice, and sort of the kind of the boldness that we're willing to take, because that's the sort of the nature of it, and the co-creation, co-funding kind of model at the beginning, right? The principles of that, and to kind of push out on that, I think that's been great to see. But also, okay, these medicines need to have certain profiles and target characteristics and the rigor by which we need to achieve that. So I think we're working really well together, I think, as a team. But any last thoughts, Marija?
So maybe just one last kind of observation. So typically we've been approaching this kind of starting with the unmet need, and then we kind of try to figure out what would be the therapeutic concept, and then we try to see which company platform would kind of fit. It's also possible that the platform companies have already, let's say, some idea, right? And maybe they, are working, they have certain indications that are already in their pipeline, but there may be other ideas that they are just not exploring at this time. Those could be great opportunities for potential, exploration further in this partnership model.
I think so too.
Yeah, so it would be great to hear from them as well.
The two kind of track of that, and how we can do that, open up that flow of kind of ideas and proposals, and right, and in a kind of a efficient way for the companies. I think we're trying to kind of get that to work even better. I think but the other thing I would say, maybe in closing, I think is also just the sense of even in a year to kind of set this up, get to know one another, build the trust and relationship piece scientifically. What's the strategy? How to build a portfolio? It's quite a lot to take over in a year, but I have been impressed and appreciate the leadership from you and others at Pfizer of just like getting started on R&D with great ideas, right? And how do we get more efficient about that? And I think, again, kind of hitting our stride, I feel like.
I think we learned so much, right, this year. So if anything, I'm anticipating 25 is going to be even better.
Even better.
Right? Yeah. So a lot to look forward to.
Well, terrific partner. Thank you for that, and all of our Pfizer colleagues and colleagues in Pioneering Medicines and the platform companies for what is a great opportunity, and we hope makes a major impact for patients and for Pfizer's portfolio over time.
Thank you very much.
Likewise. Thank you so much for spending time with me today.
It has been a pleasure.